What is up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I got a somewhat budget. It's a little bit expensive according to my budget rules and guidelines, but it's probably one of the jankiest decks I have ever made and probably will ever make. It's going to be Jeskai Hazoret. What the heck do I mean by Jeskai Hazoret's Lottery? Well, remember when the spoiled cards, when the cycle of like the last, Oketra's last, Bontu's last, Kefnet's last, Hazoret's last, and Ronus's last cards were spoiled, everyone was pretty much in agreement, and they still are now, that Hazoret's Undying Fury was the worst of those 5 cards. For 6 mana, you look at the top 4 and you make cats, probably one of the worst cards in the set, especially since it's like a rare or mythic or something like that. It's a rare. So, I try to make a deck around it anyway. And this is like the jankiest deck I probably will ever make. So, the reason I'm calling it like Jeskai Hazoret's Lottery is because it's a lottery. If you hit with your Hazoret's Undying Fury, that's great. You really actually get ahead in the game. You really do. But if you whiff, you hit 3 lands, or you just hit stuff that's not really useful to you right now, yeah, you're most likely going to lose the game. So I don't expect any of you to go out and buy this. If you already have the pieces to it or whatever, go ahead and just put it together and see how well it does for you. But it is a janky deck. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So let's get into why I think the deck could do decent. Obviously playing the 4 copies of Hazoret's Undying Fury, but we're also playing 4 copies of Metallurgic Summonings. So the good thing about Summonings is, A, it costs 5 mana, so you can hit off Hazoret's Undying Fury. But B, we're playing a lot of instants and sorceries. We're playing 23 instants and sorceries. We're kind of a control deck, and we're just kind of relying on the Metallurgic Summonings here. We're playing a few other creatures that are literally 5 mana, so do keep that in mind. So Metallurgic Summonings is in there. And Hazoret's Undying Fury is just as bad as everyone's saying it. At first, I was reading the card. It says, shuffle your library, then exile the top 4 cards. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from them without paying their mana cost. At first, I read it, and it didn't say anywhere that says until end of turn. So I thought you could play these cards whenever you want. But further looking at the rules, you actually have to cast those cards before Hazoret's Undying Fury completely resolves and goes to the graveyard. So you resolve it, then you look at the top 4, you exile them, quote unquote, then you put any lands, basically any lands or other Hazoret's Undying Furies into exile, and then you have to cast the other cards that are converted mana cost 5 or less right now. You could choose what order, but you have to cast them right now before you put Hazoret's Undying Fury into your graveyard. So at first it was looking like you could cast the cards at any time, but you have to cast them after you cast Hazoret's Undying Fury, which could be a pain to do. Let's just talk about the other creatures first, because we're only playing 2 other creatures, So we're playing 3 copies of Cataclysmic Gearhulk and 3 copies of Glorybringer. Cataclysmic Gearhulk can sweep a huge board for us while kind of keeping our stuff alive. We can keep a Metallurgic Summonings. We can also keep one of our Glorybringers if we have another Cataclysmic Gearhulk. It really allows us to keep a whole bunch of things out. And the Metallurgic Summonings tokens that come out from Metallurgic Summonings are artifacts. You could choose one of those as an artifact. Then you could choose the Cataclysmic Gearhulk as your creature. Then your Metallurgic Summonings as your enchantment. So, Cataclysmic Gearhulk, you would think kind of would hurt us in this deck. It doesn't hurt us as much as it does other decks. 3 Glorybringer, again. This card's just insanely good. 4 power in the air that can fly. Removal in itself. Haste. You guys know how good Glorybringer is. So those are our creatures. Let's move to our instants and sorceries and planeswalkers. Alright, let's go over some of the best things you can hit with Hazoret's Undying Fury. We're going to be playing 2 copies of Oketra's Last Mercy. 2 copies of Fumigate, and 2 copies of Dovin Bond. So let me talk about the rules about playing 2 Mercy, or Oketra's Last Mercy, and a Hazoret's Undying Fury in the same turn. Let's say you cast Hazoret's Undying Fury. You hit an Oketra's Last Mercy off of it. You cast Oketra's Last Mercy, reset your life total. These effects of your lands to untap don't compound where you lose now 2 turns of your lands not untapping. They both work at the same time. So that means it's basically like you're casting Oketra's Last Mercy without any backdraw, because your lands will not, obviously they won't untap your next turn, but then they will untap the following turn. So what I'm trying to say is the effects don't compound on top of each other. They both have it where your lands next turn don't untap, and then the following turn they do untap. So basically, if you hit an Oketra's Last Mercy off of Hazoret's Undying Fury, you just play Oketra's Last Mercy without any backdraw. So that's really sweet. 2 Fumigates. Sweeper gains this life, 5 mana, hits off Hazoret's Undying Fury. You know how good that is. And then 2 Dovin Bond is our only Planeswalker in the deck. I was originally playing stuff like Jace, but that rotates out. So I try to keep this rotation proof, and it is rotation proof. Except for one of our lands, unfortunately. But anyway, Dovin Bond, and there you hit this off of Hazoret's Undying Fury, or you just cast it from your hand. It's a Planeswalker, helps keep aggro from doing stuff. You can gain life, draw cards off of it. Its ultimate can be game-ending, because it puts our opponents at what we're trying to do, is not untapping our lands. So, Dovin Bond was a 2 of here, just because it's good against aggro. So it gains us life, draws us cards, makes the creature on their side small, can't activate its abilities and stuff like that. So at least the 2 copies of Dovin Bond here in this deck. I'm going to go over the rest of the spells right now. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Glimmer and Genius, 4 copies of Harness Lightning, 4 copies of Insidious Will, and 3 copies of Refuse to Cooperate. Okay, so Glimmer and Genius and Harness Lightning are, you guys know how good those 2 cards are together. Card draw and removal that have to do with energy. Insidious Will is actually pretty strong. If you could cast this after you've cast an Undying Fury, I know that's 10 mana, but you just get to exile the top 8, basically. So actually what will happen is you cast Hazoret's Undying Fury, then you Insidious Will it, you copy it, and you replay it. But the first Hazoret's Undying Fury, the original one, will go off. You get to look at or exile the top 4, and you do that whole spiel. Then after that resolves, you get to do the second one. So it's not where you get to exile the top 8. It's exile the top 4, resolve that, put those cards into exile that you didn't cast or you couldn't cast or whatever. Then you get to do it again. So keep that in mind. Still a super strong play. Usually that will win you the game, especially if a Metallurgic Summoning's out. Or with Insidious Will, again, it's just a counter spell, or you can, if your opponent's trying to, like, remove one of your creatures or something like that, you can just flip this around. It can be a removal spell. Just Insidious Will I found was fitting in this deck, just because it could be so strong for us. And then 3 copies of Refuse to Cooperate, which originally I was in here because I thought Hazoret's Undying Fury, you could cast the cards at any time, but this card's still pretty good, because if your opponent tries to play something huge, if it's really bad against aggro decks, it really is. But if you're playing against a mid-range deck, you can always, if you're playing against an aggro deck, you can always sideboard this out, but against mid-range decks and control decks is actually pretty strong, because they play Gear Hulk or something, they gotta deal 6 damage to themselves. And then the Aftermath card is really what we want. It's just Insidious Will, but costs 1 less, and it only needs 1 blue mana for. So, I played it just because it was worth it, really, in this deck. I was trying to make it janky. If you can copy a Hazoret's Undying Fury, you most likely will just win the game. All right, let's run over the lands really quick. We're playing 25 lands. Now, the problem is I wanted to play less lands, because we're not trying to hit lands off our Hazoret's Undying Fury, but you gotta play the 25. I can't, if you miss land drops here, you just lose the game since we're control deck. So, 25 lands. We're playing 4 Highland Lake, 4 Inspiring Vantage, 4 Port Town, 5 Island, 4 Mountain, 4 Plains. Inspiring Vantage is probably the most expensive card. You could just change it out with any red-white dual land that enters tapped or whatever. Let's move to the sideboard. Alright, sideboard time. Mostly playing more removal. We're going to be playing three Abrade. Could be very, very good. More Fumigates. More Sweepers against aggro mid-range decks. Gains his life. Just super sweet card. 4 Magma Spray against, again, aggro decks. This is what we're really worried about. 4 Negate against Control. Now, I actually never found myself bringing in the Negate because it's just so bad when you hit a counter spell with Hazoret's Undying Fury. So try to refrain from that as much as possible. And then 2 more Catcher's Last Mercy because it's super strong against aggro and mid-range decks. They get you down to 5 life. They're like, I have a Ramanop Ruins in play. If I could just shock them and then just play 2 more lands, I can win the game. How about I just reset my life total? How about I just do that? And you have to do another 15, 20 damage to me again. Really just screws over aggro decks. One of my viewers was telling me how good this is against aggro decks, and I started playtesting with it, and it really is. They get you down to like 5 life. You cast this, and they might as well just scoop because they'll have no cards in hand. They'll just be top decking. Having to redo hitting you for 20 is pretty hard with a deck that doesn't have any cards in their hand. So this card can really just screw over aggro decks and even mid-range decks because they play, mid-range decks are most likely going to be playing stuff like Bursting Hydra. Just huge Teamer Energy is a mid-range deck, green-black counters. Just resetting your life can be super good and buy you a whole bunch of time. I know this deck is janky. I know it's probably not as good as any other deck I've ever made. And that was the point. I tried to make a deck built around this card, and I still kind of did. I won a few games, but I mostly lost games with this. So this is kind of a thing that you play on Cockatrice or X-Mage or something, or if you already have the cards, you just slap it together or something like that. I wouldn't recommend, if you don't have stuff like Glorybringer or those expensive dual lands, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying that stuff because the deck's not going to perform well. This is just kind of like my fun deck. I just wanted to make a super janky deck built around Hazoret's Undying Fury. And anyway, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked the video, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.